tomorrow night the lion dance in here, and we're going to film it and then send it to them, and they're going to share it with their employees. So, so that was, we usually go to their headquarters. It's in Framingham, and it's usually in their cafeteria, and they, have an international luncheon for all the people that work there. So, I mean, they have a pretty amazing office there. Yeah. They have a they have a dry clean and all that in there for the employees. So, anyways, so we're gonna get started. We have that banner up there, but that's just there because we're using it tomorrow. They get a little free advertising, right? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Oh, Peter, can you shift over here because I think you're blocking the camera. Not that it's okay. Yeah, yeah. Ready? You can come up. You can come up, way up, and then give Lynn a little space. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and stop. Okay. A few stretches up and down. 1, 2, 3. To your right. 2, 3. To your left. 2, 3. Center. Inhale. Exhale. Hands up. Reach down. 1, 2, 3. To your right. To your left. Center. Inhale. Exhale. Hands up. Reach down. 1, 2, 3. To your right. 2, 3. To your left. 2, 3. Center. Inhale. Exhale. Hands on your waist. Circular movements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, and reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, and stop. Okay, cross. Knees, circular movements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, and stop. Okay. Neck turning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Back and forth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2. Center. Tilt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, and 2. Center. Rotating. 1, 2, 3. Reverse. 1, 2, and center. Okay, hands up. Pull in. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, spread your feet. Turning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, and stop. Okay, stretch it out. Switch. 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 Switch and straighten the knee. Switch. Switch. Center switch. Okay, now we do center inner thighs. So you can really feel, when you go from side to side, you can feel the relationship between the two legs. So, stretching can be a sort of a one group muscle type of thing or one area. But when we move through the positions, which is actually a combination of balancing your musculature, one is sort of pulling you over, the other one's kind of letting it go. So essentially weight shifting too. So, all that action is really a balance. Your arms, we don't feel it when we fold our arm or spread it like this because there's not any resistance. When you're standing, you're supporting a load. When you stretch, it's that support of the load and the ability for you to release and balance motion and stability. Now, I suppose if you're standing on your hands and you start to do a stretch, it would feel different because you would be carrying a load. So the muscles are working to carry the load. And then you're trying to stretch it. It makes it a little bit of a conflict in one way. So that's why you have to, when you shift, it's unloading, letting it go, and then getting those to cooperate the same way as if you weren't even putting a load on it. So that's why when you go on a chair and you kind of bend your knee, or you're sitting on a couch and you pull your knee up, it folds readily, like this. But once you're in a loaded position and you go like this, you have the load restriction and then the joint not letting go. That's why downward posture is something that you have to actually let yourself kind of spread out and then sit into it. That's the conflict, because this wants to tighten. And if this is tight holding the load, it doesn't let your knee bend. So that's finding that, that specific action. So anyways, something that we have to work on. Yeah, because it's your body has to go through the process of figuring out how it's supposed to happen, even though we mentally say, let's do that. All right, shoulder roll. And reverse. And center. Okay, press, release. And stop. Hands up. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Okay, wrists. We're going this way. So it's, yeah, the opposite way. Yeah. So this way. Peter, this way. Come up and down. Yeah. Reverse. And Sana. Okay, palms down. Bigger circle. And stop. Okay, shake it out. A few side to sides. Okay, lift. Okay, insert the needle. So we're here, lifting up. And switch. Okay, Sana. Okay, we're gonna work the legs. Okay, switch. And Sana. Okay, side to sides. Switch. And Sana. Okay, deep breathing. silk reeling. Okay, center, switch. Okay, center, open and close. Switch. Okay, center, circular movements. Okay, lower hoop. Shoulder height. Elbows down. Lower. Palms down. Extend. Okay, deep breathing. Inhale. Okay, part the horse's mane. Switch. Okay, center. Cloud hands. Okay, center. Carry tiger to the mountain. Okay, infinity sign. Okay, form the fist. Okay, palms together. Okay, turn, draw the bow. Okay, fan to the back. Okay, raise the hand. Okay, deep breathing. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Okay, good. So go through the sequence. Okay, feet parallel. So, okay. Preparation, begin. Okay, deep breathing. So, we think about sequences and we memorize them, but then, the imagery, the mental imagery, the visuals that you pick up is something that's important because we go all through all these exercises. And I could probably go through them without saying a word, and a lot of times I just count. But the thing is, we copy. We take in the visual information, and it gets stored. So we learn, the bulk of everything that we do uh, through the eyes. So by seeing it, that's why I do the forms with you and the exercise with you each and every class, because you pick up the imagery and I try to do it the best I can so that you pick up the best image. So while we're recording it and you see that in its only 2 dimension on screen, you start to take in that information and it's saturated in here and you see it and it's the same stuff all the time, but what you're seeing eventually gets those images in your mind, and those images are what you send into the body and you replicate it. So everyone's actually looking, much, uh, the same. We all look like we're in the same position, essentially. The angular positions are starting to form. That's muscle memory. And then the sequential side of doing things, the transitions, will constantly evolve based on how synchronized your body is and how coordinated your body is. And coordination is developed because the physical being really doesn't know what to do with the body unless you kind of teach it. And this is how we teach our body, doing this over and over again. Creatures of habit, so we do it over and over again until it's in the system. It just becomes embedded in your system. So things that we take for granted and take it as second nature are things that we just picked up, throughout the course of life. So the things that you've done from the very beginning should be better than it was than it is now, as you go through. It should be better now, So a few things that we do that are pretty consistent is that when we eat, we generally can put it in the mouth without actually missing it until you start to lose some of this control and then you start to miss. And that happens, because everything that we just is that motor skill. We know to go up, we go across. It's not that blocky. They used to say, the square meal, and they teach you to be formal at the table. You use certain utensils, and every culture uses different ones. But essentially, it goes from here to here, and however you do it. And we develop a sensitivity to that. So when we're lifting our arms or we're turning our hands, these are things that we do functionally. I mentioned before, how do you shake a salt shaker, or how do you squeeze a ketchup bottle or something like that? So we learn how to do these things, and it's agility in the fingers that we use when we form the fists. If you use chopsticks, it takes a lot of nimbleness with your fingers. One of the things we talk about, the relationship in motion. One of the things that we do that has to work when we're maybe having dinner and you have, say, a piece of something there, and you have to cut it, whether it's bread or, depending, a piece of steak or whatever, you have to hold it and you move. One's passive, one's active. But there's still something there. If you did both, double weighted, you'd be doing this, and you know what happens, right? The peas are all over the table, and so that's how kids do it. They see you doing this, until they get that control, then they're not really refining the cut. So that's what we learn. We learn how to move. So when we're doing this, that's that action. One is passive, one is active. Sustaining a position while the other hand is moving. Sustaining a position while the other hand is moving. Sustaining a position while the body is moving. So this is happening throughout the course of the form. So the balance between movement and action become something that's um, learned in the body while we don't always see it. You know, like we were just talking about this. When you go to the form, sometimes it's this, and then it's this. This thing, this side, just went somewhere, but not really part of what you're supposed to be doing. And the reason it shouldn't go over here is because if it's functional on a, say, a technique side, if you're going to block and you're going to punch, you want this hand to be here simply because it has a position to go up or down depending if something comes into your space. And that will happen because if it is a defensive offensive movement, you left yourself exposed. So that's what an opening is. So if I go like this, there's an opening here and here. So the hand is here. So you have an option of doing that. So it's just efficiency in movement. So, you know, there's a reason for why it has to be there. And each one of these are postures, and they're all different. So that's what we learn to discover over time. So I see that diagonal flying, everyone is creating that position. You know, day one, you didn't know whether the leg should have been here or there, or this is here or this is here, you know. So all those positions, that the joint angle positions start to be configured through what you pick up visually. So, you know, it makes sense if you think it through like this. Because if you don't think it through, or at least hear the, you know, the idea behind it, you just go through the motions. And that's how a lot of people just go through life. It's just through the motions, right? This actually is very refining. You have to refine it, go through it, and it evolves and constantly, you know, gets better and better. But it's through your understanding. Yeah. Well, it's for holding a teacup, you know, with a little bit of elegance, you know. Yeah. Or it's holding, even pouring tea, you have to hold the little hook on there, and then you have to lift your elbow, right? And you drop your elbow. But the idea of this is using your fingertips, a pinch of salt, or a lifting of your wrists, or a sinking of the elbow. So when we do this, it's actually using your forearm in a rising direction, because what goes up must come down, right? So when we're here, then we move, and then we move. So a lot of times, positions, and when you sustain it, is a setup for the next action, right? So what do you learn when you sustain a position is you learn to move from there. My hand is here. When you sink, you learn to do this. But what is that? That's closing. Like we raise the hands like this, and then when we turn like this, we close our center. When I go forward like this, it creates a rounding. So when we go up or down, it allows, that's what the balance is. When you go up, you go down. When you go right, you go left. So this goes actually here to here. This goes from here to there. And then you go back and back and back and here and here. So you're constantly manipulating your skeletal structure based on what's this is telling it to do, based on what it kind of picked up visually or audially as a principle or a concept. So this is a hook wrist, and the action is lifting. Now this is kind of a little bit more extreme than this, because that's lifting too. So where does your intent or the consciousness of that movement go on the lift? That it's on the top of your hand or your arm, and that when the fingers go down, the wrist goes up. When the wrist goes down, the fingers go up. So you see there's a response. While you think of this as a pivotal motion, it also creates an action of leverage. So when the hand goes up and it goes down, it creates. So this is what we talked about last night about the wave and the movement. When the hand comes like this, and it's like you're letting it create a motion as a cycle from the hand, from the fingertips to the elbow to the shoulder, creates this wave. So it's like water, right? The ocean has waves, and those waves are very powerful based on the action of it. When the waves are really big and they go up and they come down, it crashes. The weight of that water is devastating. You know, when the Titanic was sinking and it was tipping, when the water went way up there and it dropped down, it was like tons of weight. That's how it destroys the ship. Well, when we wave, the force of that wave comes from the sinking and the motion and gravity acting on the movement. So when the hand goes like this and it goes like this, setting up this is just one of the parts of preparation. So while we just think this is preparation, you're preparing every time you move. Now what happens when you speed up the movement? It looks like that. Because the free fall of dropping creates a force in a direction. Right? So that's what you're actually developing. Right? But it has to go and then go out and finish as if it's like an arrow shooting into a target. So your fingertips become a thrust. You see, so that's sort of the energy of the movement. So, while Tai Chi is done slowly, then it can become quick. So that's a ripple of a movement that is created by a sequence of events from your muscular that created that. See, so it's kind of another whole level of seeing or visualizing an action that you might have had to discover or maybe imagine, right? So whoever developed these, or the people that developed this, must have had this in mind at some point in their training. So that's what really a punch is. When you flick the hand, when you go like that, it's very targeted. When you point at someone, most people can go like that. It's kind of uncoordinated. It's just but it's not really structured. But when you're like this and you go like this, or you go like this, it's now a structured movement that you've developed through your training and practice. So it's a learned skill that can be refined and improved. And what's improved is the timing, the accuracy, the consistency of that motion. So that's what, we develop. I mean, it could be endless talking about this stuff, but we have to get to the form. So, all right, ready? So we open the stance. Okay, we'll do the long form. 180 degrees, and then we turn back to the side level, and you're going to lift the knee, heel kick, 2 punches to the ear, sit back, put your palms facing each other, flip it over, step up and fold the elbows, lift the knee, pot, cross over, toe heel pivot, flip the hands, fold the elbows, potting leg, and then go into the parry and punching. Then it repeats, form the fist. And this is just doing the sequence a second time. Carry tiger to the mountain. And then the obliques for a second time. And then we go back to single whip. And we reverse the ball. So this is like the same movement we have at the end, diagonal flying on the right, except we continue to pot the horse's mane. And here's your first downward posture. Then here's your first cross hand that leads you to golden cockerel. And here's your press, thrust, and kick. And your other side, golden cockerel. Then we go back to neutral, reverse, and then here's the second time we do this. Repulse the monkey. And here's the second time. We step up, raise the hand into the insert needle section. Brush knee one time. That's a combination of that and insert needle. And if you notice, fan through the back is generally tied to parry and punch. Then we step up, form the fist, and punch, divert, block, and punch. So there's some progression and some linkages that we always have that are consistent. Grasp the sparrow's tail, goes to single whip. Single whip leads to cloud hands. So that's then we continue to this, turn the shoulders, palm strikes face. Sit back 180-degree turn, set up your hands like this, lotus kick, and then we're going to do the brush knee, and then forward, punch down to crotch. Step up again, grasp the sparrow's tail. Okay, then we're going to do the final downward posture. It's the second time again. And I mentioned earlier that this leads to a cross hand before golden cocker. Here's the cross hand here, 7-star. Then we sit back, turn, hook, and ride the tiger. Here's the left palm strike. So we just go straight out like this and turn. And change the palms to do the double lotus. Come down, come over the top, bring this down to lower hoop, set up the palm strikes face, and repeat. That's a double. We've done that 2 times. This goes to parry and punch. We've done that in between the kicks at one time. And then we set up for high pat the horse, just like the first and second kick. Now we go to neutral, right and left and right. Grasp the sparrow's tail. And close. Okay, good. Deep breathing. So I think we've got about 10 minutes. So what's unique about the practice, Tai Chi, is the way we practice. The footwork, the pivoting of the feet, the shifting of the weight. That's really learning how to move your body, locomotion, mobility, all of that's tied. So for prevention of age-related degeneration and improving balance and building motor skill is really involved with the legs. The legs are very hard to teach. So when I talk about the hands, the eyes, the body, the waist, and the stance is the last thing, right? It's in that set of ideas, concepts that have to be linked together. The 5 coordinations. The legs, we just know them as legs. We don't know that legs represents the stance, it represents your transition, represents your footwork, represents where it takes you. That's the mapping, the direction, all of that stuff is in there. So the legs, the pivoting is very important because when we shift and we pivot, what's the purpose of that pivot? It's not just to open the stance, it's also giving you the stability of a base that's wider than this. Because when you're like this and you just step here, you're kind of on a tightrope. When you go like this, the base got wider. So now you're standing in a rectangle that's actually more stable. You see? So you have the option of going forward, backward, and then if you're standing here with your feet kind of flared out like this, your tipping isn't even as wobbly. You know what I mean? So it also takes you in a direction, because when I'm here, it might be easier to see in the mirror. When I'm here, I actually went in that direction as a steering. So when I shift, I actually have to follow that foot with the hip. And then when I turn my hip, it takes me to this position. So you're teaching your lower half of your body to carry you through into directions, into the space that you're trying to get to. But what's happening when you do that is you're building this proprioception, this spatial awareness and control of your joints. You don't see all of that happening when you're first learning it, because what are you focused on? Sequence. After you learn the sequence and you're somewhat familiar with it, then your body will start to adapt. That's another stage of learning. And that learning, whether it's the hand movements, the shoulder movement, the torso, all of this stuff has to become part of the awareness. So the consciousness that you start to develop, awareness and mindfulness of the action, becomes a training that makes you very insightful about a lot of things. Because the brain works the same way, whether it's Tai Chi, problem solving, dealing with stress, it's all dealing with a situation, and then you have to figure it out. And your mind becomes very strong and capable of doing that. So that's really something that happens over time. But to tell someone that happens, they wouldn't believe you, because they haven't gone through a process like that. So because I've done this for a long time, and I spent a lot of time with my teacher. I studied with him for 27 years. You can imagine, most people don't have friends that are, but I saw him frequently for 27 years. So, and learning and seeing and trying to understand how he thought is what happens when you follow. That's old school learning. This is how people learned back in the early centuries, because you follow someone that leads you, whether it's a musician, usually skills. So I learned to got involved with how our minds would exchange. So then I began to understand how he was thinking and why he would do things a certain way, and that continued as I took over to teach. And that evolution, you begin to really understand the mind, the body, and you start to understand how people think. Not just how he thinks. Now I begin to learn how students think, and then that really helps you teach, because you're not only teaching to one, like they do in schools today, to one single mind of thought. So the people that invent these teaching methodologies is usually their idea of how it should be done. But everyone's quite different, right? So you have to kind of develop the insight of how someone is trying to learn. And it's a challenge because everyone is physically different. So if you're physically different, your understanding and how you process it is going to be different. But you can imagine that it's very good for the teacher to go through that. So when I first started teaching, people would say to me, so now that you've got to where you are, what do you learn? This is what you learn. You learn um, how to teach better, how people are not seeing what you're trying to get across, and it takes a long time for even you to realize that they're not seeing it. So that's why I talk a lot about this stuff, the theories and principles, because those are there. We just don't understand them all the time. But the idea of moving and then the feet, that pivoting really is very important. So sometimes, Peter, you're better on the right pivot than the left. The left foot doesn't really want to do that as much. So what do we do when we practice? We work the worst side. Because if you're only focusing on making your good side gooder, then what happens to the bad side? It stays bad. So you work, and I don't mean bad because it's, what I mean is that you have to let it be aware that it needs to do a little bit more. Now, when you turn your foot, it's not just the foot, it's your hip. So maybe the hip is the reason why it doesn't go out. And then shifting of weight. Well, I said earlier this when we're talking about stretching, that your legs are weight bearing. Well, if you're bearing your weight, it's not going to let you twist and turn. So what do you have to do? You have to unweight. It's not going to let you twist because if it's bearing weight, your muscle is kind of rigid because it doesn't allow you to turn. So when you unweight, it takes it to a stage of lightness and your leg is free to move. When you fold your knee, there's a state of releasing, taking out the weight and letting it fill. So that's a process that the lower extremities have to pick up on as a feeling, an experience. But when you do that and you soften your legs, you're going to be much more stable. Your balance is going to be much better, and you're going to be much more relaxed. So, the whole premise of doing all of this is learning how to move. But before you can learn how to move, you first have to learn how to relax. So when you start your form, the first thing is to clear your mind and let go of your body tension. And then you start to move. Meditation, all this kind of works off of that. But the difference between standing meditation and just being mindful of something is that you're not building motor skill. So there's styles of martial arts that you just stand there. It's called I Chuan, or somebody's just standing, clear thoughts and letting the body experience. But to me, that's not enough to build motor skill, because we learn motor skill through doing it, very specific to the task. So the only way you can build motor skill and coordination and integration of body is to do it, because how will you know that you can't do it until you try to do it? Then when you figure out that there's more to that than what meets the eye, then you try to get more information, try to get the body to work better. So sequentially, we build that, and then we take those postures, the book of movement, which is the form, and you cultivate it by working with one unit. Maybe a brush knee, maybe a grasp the sparrow's tail, maybe holding a single whip and finding out what that hook means, right? Or how it feels when we sink the elbow, relax the shoulder, hollow the chest, or cup the shoulder. I call it cupping the shoulder. And, all these positions have a bit of tension in it in the beginning because you don't know how much tension to use. And then by holding it, you learn to delete it, the excessiveness. It doesn't have to be tense because you're letting the arms just kind of hang there. Then your body will figure out that it doesn't need much effort to keep these muscles tight. You don't need a tight muscle because you're not doing anything, all just sustaining it. And then when you move, you're coming from a state of relaxed position, you can move better. If you're a little bit tight, then what do you have to do? You have to relax. Or you're tight and then you force the movement, then it starts to look a little bit rigid. So we learn, especially with the mirrors, you get to see yourself a little bit, and then you kind of see if you're doing certain things. So that's about it, I guess. No, it went out because actually that light has a a sensor in it. It's a, it's motion sensor. Yeah. Only that one light has it. If this one might have it too, but maybe it's off. Yeah, there's a little switch next to it. So that's the only one that's on, and it goes off and it comes on once in a while. So if it doesn't detect movement when we're still, it goes out. Yeah, it has to detect movement. So when we're going slow, I should do all the lights. So when we're going slow enough, they all go out. And we know not going fast. So, anyways, yeah, it's it's 11 now. So, all right, we're signing off. I'll see you next time. We had a great group today. It's the same group, and hopefully we got something out of that.